Join us at Women of Courage and celebrate the achievements of women.
Today, I choose love. From my past, my future, to my family and friends, I choose love. With everything we've got going on in the world today, all the hate and negativity, love is all we have, and it's all we need. If you can start each day with love, you will watch your world change. But the time is now to forgive, to forget, to move on. Do this and your perspective will change. If I know one thing, I would rather live in a world with love and openness than a world full of pain. And it's our choice to believe in something bigger than us. One world, one people, one love.
The Women of Courage show is being broadcast by the Women and Children's Restoration Ministries to help you problem solve, to help you dream again, to help you believe that anything is possible. We want you to believe that you do not have to marry the first man you meet just to get someone to take care of you. You do not have to live a life of drudgery. You can educate yourself. All you have to do is learn to read competently. We want you to take a chance on yourself. Stop believing all the soothsayers around you that have never left a state in their lives. People who do not have courage to fly. People who only think of lying, cheating, and stealing. You can live an exciting life. All you have to do is believe that you can make your dreams come true. You do not have to go to bed with someone you despise day in and day out. You have the right to marry someone that you can talk to someone that believes in you and has faith in you as a human being. In other words, you do not have to settle for just anyone. But what you must do is strive toward your goal. You must be goal oriented. You must organize yourself. You must be clear about what you want in life and why you want such a life. All of us are made up of dreams. As our dreams unfold in our lives, our spirit soars. Realizing our dreams becomes a problem because oftentimes we are beaten down by our friends and family. We are beaten down at school by people laughing at us because of our shoe size, our ear size, our breast size, the clothes we wear, etc. We are beaten down by people saying nothing will come of our lives. We are beaten down when our mothers and grandmothers constantly say that we're going to be just like our father, an inmate in prison. Many of us are also discouraged when our mothers are inattentive. She is wrapped up in her new boyfriend. But life anew is possible. It is my job to encourage you to go as far as you can dream and as far as your dreams can take you. It is my job to get you to believe in life again. I am sick and tired of people failing at life just because they are around negative speaking and negative acting people. Do not let the failure of other people make you lose confidence in yourself. Yes, you may be surrounded by poverty, but you must look for a way out. The book, If You Believe in God, You Do Not Belong in Prison, will help you. What you must do above all else is learn to read competently. You must read, and read. Anyone who laughs at you for reading, you need to leave that person alone. I do not care if it's your mother. Anyone who discourages you, you are to stop all association. Man is not different than plants. We need encouragement to grow as plants need water to thrive. You are to leave foolish, stupid people alone. Their ignorance will weigh you down or even get you killed. Sit down and think how you can avoid these people, especially if they're in your family. If you are overwhelmed with the tiring feeling that feels as if you're carrying a bag of stone around every morning when you get out of bed and think how you'll have to spend another living life you're not passionate about, the books I suggest are the perfect solution for your unique needs. Not only will we help you realize why these feelings overwhelm you and what you can do to change it, but they will also teach you how to live a life of strength, courage, fearlessness in order to realize all of your dreams. If you are lacking the attitude and psychology, proper resource or vision to make your dreams a reality, combined with dissatisfaction with the execution of your plans, but you remain firmly dedicated to making your ambition a reality and creating the life you deserve, you will certainly derive the most benefit from professional, incredible content within these books. Contents that will assist you in achieving the results that you are after. You are never to give up on yourself. Are you ready to leave your future to chance? Of course not. Take your life in your hand and learn all the necessary tools, mindset, strategies used by the men and women of courage, used in order to live the life of their dream. Change your life with our book starting today. This show is being dedicated to Congressman John Lewis to give recognition to his life and to his work. I want to say thank you to him for dedicating his life so that I would receive equal treatment under the law and that I would have the right to vote. He spent his entire life in Congress working for me and you. John Lewis died Friday, July the 17th, 2020, after attending a Black Lives Matter rally in D.C. Congressman Lewis served in the United States House of Representatives from Georgia's 5th Congressional District for 30 years from the year 1987 until his death. John Lewis was more than just a statesman. He was a lifelong advocate and spokesman for human rights and liberty. And I, for one, loved him. The life of John Lewis and Elijah Cummings let you know that black men made the history of this country. They were neither silent nor were they obscure. John Lewis was carried across the Pettus Bridge Sunday, July 26, 2020 in Selma, Alabama. He walked across this bridge in 1965 with Jose Williams of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference leading the demonstration. John Lewis was then chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. The men were protesting the right for black men and women to vote. Congress passed the Voting Rights Act after the demonstration that Sunday. The act was signed into law on August 6, 1965 by President Lyndon Johnson. The law outlawed the discriminatory voting practices adopted in many southern states after the Civil War, including literacy tests as a prerequisite to vote. Selma was the turning point in the battle for justice and equality in the United States. The law provided for federal examiners to oversee voter registration in areas where voting rights were endangered. Republican legislators protested this addition to the law. They had spent decades fighting the Voting Rights Act. They believed only free white men should vote in this country. And if you look at their behavior after this act was signed, you'll see that the Republicans still believe this way. Deacon Jimmy Lee Jackson was shot to death several days earlier on February the 26, 1965, by a state trooper, James Fowler, during a peaceful march in nearby Marion, Alabama. He was defending his mother. A man placed flower petals on the Edmund Pettus Bridge ahead of Representative John Lewis's casket crossing during a memorial service for Mr. Lewis. A series of events began Saturday in Mr. Lewis's hometown of Troy, Alabama, to pay tribute to the late congressman and his legacy. He lied in state at the U.S. Capitol before his private funeral. At the historic Ebenezer Baptist Church, which the Reverend Martin Luther King once led. 3 presidents spoke at his funeral: President Bill Clinton, President Bush, and President Hussein Barack Obama. These men all knew John Lewis well. They knew him intimately. First, I would like for you to listen to a synopsis of his life spoken by a person from CNN. Then listen to the portion of the eulogy by President Obama. Be mindful that this is the 3rd eulogy that President Obama has had to give. Finally, I would like for you to listen to Morgan Freeman read the last words of John Lewis. Lewis is telling the young that he is passing the baton, that the baton is theirs. There is still much more work to be done. The march is not over.
Throughout his life, John Lewis stood for people's rights. Born on an Alabama cotton farm into a segregated America, he'd not only lived to see an African-American elected president, he would be a major part of making it happen.
Tonight we gather here in this magnificent stadium in Denver because we still have a dream. We still have a dream.
Lewis, growing up, was angered by the unfairness of the Jim Crow South. He credited Martin Luther King Jr. for inspiring him to join the civil rights movement. And eventually, Lewis would become one of its most prominent leaders. As a student, he organized sit-ins at lunch counters. In the early 60s, he was a freedom rider, challenging segregation at interstate bus terminals across the South. The embodiment of nonviolence, he frequently suffered beatings by angry mobs. Lewis, 23 years old at the time, was the youngest speaker at the 1963 March on Washington.
We do not want our freedom gradually, but we want to be free now.
Then, 2 years later, led a march for voting rights in Selma. On the Edmund Pettus Bridge, he and the other marchers were met by heavily armed state and local police. They were set upon and beaten. Lewis suffering a fractured skull. It would be forever remembered as Bloody Sunday. The images of brutality shocked the nation, galvanizing support for the Voting Rights Act signed into law by President Lyndon Johnson. Lewis never lost his young activist spirit, taking it from protest to politics. Standing up for what he believed was right, Lewis was arrested more than 40 times by police, according to his congressional office.
I'm on my way, and we're going to win this race.
He was elected to city council in Atlanta, then to Congress in Washington, representing Georgia's 5th District, fighting against poverty and for health care while working to help younger generations by improving education. He reached out to young people in other ways, co-writing a series of graphic novels about the civil rights movement, winning him a National Book Award. In a life of so many moments and great achievements, it was the achievement of another in 2008 that perhaps meant the most: the election of President Barack Obama.
We have never been just a collection of individuals or a collection of red states and blue states. We are and always will be the United States of America.
A dream Lewis admits was too impossible to consider decades before, even as he fought to forge its foundation.
This is an unbelievable period in our history. Martin Luther King Jr. will be very pleased to see what is happening in America. This is a long way from the March on Washington. It's a great distance from marching across that bridge in Selma in 1965 for the right to vote.
In 2011, after more than 50 years on the front lines of civil rights, Lewis received the nation's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, placed around his neck by America's first black president. Lewis wasn't content to just making history. He was also dedicated to preserving it. Consider the impetus of the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture. And he never stopped stirring up good trouble, as he liked to call it, boycotting the inaugurations of George W. Bush after the contested 2000 election, and vocally opposing Donald Trump in 2017, citing suspicions of Russian election meddling. At a protest against President Trump's immigration policy, the congressman, by then an elder statesman of the Democratic Party, riled up the crowd with words he had lived by as an activist, as a lawmaker, as a leader.
We must never, ever give up. We must be brave, bold, and courageous.
So here's our breaking news tonight. Congressman John Lewis, one of the leaders of the civil rights movement who went on to serve more than 30 years in Congress, has died after a 6-month battle with cancer. Joining me now is Bakari Sellers and Douglas Brinkley. Hello to both of you. How you doing, Bakari?
It's been a tough day with both C.T. Vivian and John Lewis. Our heroes around us are dying, and so my heart goes out to this entire country. Usually you send condolences to the family and friends of, but we all knew John Lewis, and he's been a part of our lives for a long period of time, and so it hurts. Today is a sad day, but we're going to lift him up in celebration and joy. I can't wait for his homegoing celebration. It's going to be one of pure joy, celebrating a man who's given us so much. And Don, let me just say real quick, I was just looking at a picture in 1966. I just posted it on my Twitter account. It was my dad and John Lewis. They were getting bailed out of jail by Sidney Poitier and Harry Belafonte. They were causing good trouble. Willie Ricks and James Foreman were there. And it just harkens back to a day where those true heroes are the reason that Don Lemon has a primetime show and Bakari Sellers can be on it.
Yep. So, Doug, so his legacy, talk to me about, I'm sorry, I can't believe that I'm reporting this, but talk to me about the legacy that he is leaving behind, one perhaps as big as a president or a head of state.
Absolutely. I mean, he was the Gandhi of America. People have been calling him the conscience of Congress, but he was much more than that. He was a teacher, an educator, a lover. You know, we talk about him being a son of the South, growing up in Troy, Alabama, and having sharecropper parents, and all of the brutality that John Lewis faced, being arrested, beaten. You know, he transformed people later in life. He would always tell little kids or somebody like myself, you know, touch my head. You want to feel there's this big dent and touch it. That's where it was. But he always believed in the power of love and not hate and redemption. And so when he was able to eventually get an apology from a former KKK police guy who ended up beating him, and Lewis accepted his apology and they hugged because he believed in the power to heal. So we're talking about somebody as big as Frederick Douglass and as Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks. John Lewis is just an American giant, somebody who believed in King's philosophy of nonviolence, has been relevant for decades. He's loved in this congressional 5th district in Atlanta, who elected him time and time again. And he believed in this country and the power to heal, but stood by principles, as was mentioned in the boycotting of inaugurations, which was a controversial thing to do. All of the grassroots Black Lives Matter activists out there, he is their leader. He is their soul. Because he's never stopped being a person of the streets and a person willing to protest for what he thought was right. Dissent for John Lewis, a mighty thing to do in the cause of justice and righteousness. And this will be treated as a death of a president would be, because John Lewis is just larger than life, and his legacy will grow and grow and grow.
Bakari, it's when, I said earlier, when you were in John Lewis's presence, you were aware that you were in the presence of a living legend. And I know it's a cliche when people say this, but it really is true. When you meet him, and I'm sure this was for kids on up to, people of all ages and of all backgrounds, he made you feel like you were the only person in the room, the only person who mattered. And when he spoke to you, he looked you dead in the eye and he meant it, right?
Yeah. People forget how long John Lewis has been in this game of justice and fighting for equality. I think he was 23 years old, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. He was the youngest speaker at the March on Washington. His relationship in SNCC with Marion Barry, with Julian Bond. He was a student of Ella Baker and Fannie Lou Hamer. There's just so much that encompasses who this man is today. And not only that, but continuously speaking out, even as he's dying, against Governor Kemp and Donald Trump, and just saying that they are the antithesis of what he believed to be true American values. And I've said something on this network often. I've said it on your show before, but a lot of times we confuse prejudice and patriotism. I want people watching this, Democrat, Republican, Black, white, doesn't matter where you're from, to understand that the essence of the American story is John Lewis. John Lewis's blood literally runs through the soil of this great country. John Lewis was beaten. John Lewis lost loved ones along the way, but he never stopped being a North Star. He never stopped fighting for justice. He never stopped being that conscience of this country. And John Lewis also realized something that other people take for granted as we're having this reckoning on race. He also realized that the election of Barack Obama wasn't the end or culmination of justice in this country, but instead the beginning of where we need to go. And so tonight is a tough night. However, we have so much to celebrate, Don.
I am going to pause for a second to take a short break while you listen to information regarding willpower and encouragement. It is all a matter of learning new behaviors. And please remember, it is easier to build strong minds than to repair injured people. What I said is a modification of a quote by Frederick Douglass. He said, "It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." Now,
Resolve is defined as successfully finding the answer to something or making a decision about something. And this is tough for some people, but this is one of the most important things you can do in your life, is deciding firmly and declaring what your purpose will be in this life. Now, you might not have the best job, the best education, or the best family situation, but the starting point to making that change is showing resolve, deciding, What do you want to change in your life? Once you make that decision, you can now focus on what steps are needed to make that change. What steps today can you make to see that change happen? Remember, you are the women of courage. Today, I want to talk about response. How do you personally respond to a setback in your life? I heard a pastor once say, "Don't let a bad chapter in your life be the final chapter." And that really hit me. How often do we let one bad thing in our life own us? You lost your job, your family left you, you struggle with abuse or addiction. Those things do happen in life, but that's not what you focus on. You focus on the response. How do I move forward now? What do I do now? Real faith is believing in something big, but willing to start small. I want to talk today about commitment. The act of making an agreement or a pledge to do something in the future. Now listen, we are all called by God, and through Him is our strength. So during these times, these hardships, we need to stay committed. Committed to His Word, committed to freeing yourself from the negativity, committed to empowering yourself, bettering yourself, and living your life to the fullest. Through God, all is possible. Once you believe and once you are committed. You are the women of courage. Today, I want to talk about self-control, the restraint exercised over one person's impulses, emotions, or desires. It is easy nowadays to lose control. We eat too much, drink too much, everything is accessible to us. The hard part in life is finding that balance, that presence of mind to know what is good for you, and to live with that discipline. I know through my own journey that when I am balanced, when I'm showing self-restraint, I start moving better. I start thinking better. I become more confident in who I am. And that's what I want you to think about. What can you do to become more balanced, to act on need and not on emotion? Remember, you are the women of courage.
John always said, he always saw the best in us. And he never gave up and never stopped speaking out because he saw the best in us. He believed in us even when we didn't believe in ourselves. And as a congressman, he didn't rest. He kept getting himself arrested. As an old man, he didn't sit out any fight. Sat in all night long on the floor of the United States Capitol. I know his staff was stressed. But the testing of his faith produced perseverance. He knew that the march is not over, that the race is not yet won, that we have not yet reached that blessed destination where we are judged by the content of our character. He knew from his own life that progress is fragile, that we have to be vigilant against the darker currents of this country's history, of our own history, with their whirlpools of violence and hatred and despair that can always rise again. Bull Connor may be gone, but today we witness with our own eyes police officers kneeling on the necks of black Americans. George Wallace may be gone, but we can witness our federal government sending agents to use tear gas and batons against peaceful demonstrators. We may no longer have to guess the number of jelly beans in a jar in order to cast a ballot. But even as we sit here, there are those in power who are doing their darndest to discourage people from voting by closing polling locations and targeting minorities and students with restrictive ID laws and attacking our voting rights with surgical precision, even undermining the Postal Service in the run-up to an election that's going to be dependent on mail-in ballots so people don't get sick. Now, I know this is a celebration of John's life. There are some who might say we shouldn't dwell on such things. But that's why I'm talking about it. John Lewis devoted his time on this earth fighting the very attacks on democracy and what's best in America that we're seeing circulate right now. He knew that every single one of us has a God-given power, and that the fate of this democracy depends on how we use it. That democracy isn't automatic. It has to be nurtured. It has to be tended to. We have to work at it. It's hard. And so he knew that it depends on whether we summon a measure, just a measure of John's moral courage to question what's right and what's wrong and call things as they are. He said that as long as he had a breath in his body, he would do everything he could to preserve this democracy. And as long as we have breath in our bodies, we have to continue his cause. If we want our children to grow up in a democracy, not just with elections, but a true democracy, representative democracy. In a big-hearted, tolerant, vibrant, inclusive America of perpetual self-creation, then we're going to have to be more like John. We don't have to do all the things he had to do because he did them for us. But we got to do something. As the Lord instructed Paul, do not be afraid. Go on speaking. Do not be silent, for I am with you. And no one will attack you to harm you, for I have many in this city who are my people. It's just, everybody's got to come out and vote. We got all those people in the city, but they can't do nothing. Like John, we've got to keep getting into that good trouble. He knew that nonviolent protest is patriotic, a way to raise public awareness and put a spotlight on injustice and make the powers that be uncomfortable. Like John, we don't have to choose between protests and politics. It's not an either-or situation. It's a both-and situation. We have to engage in protests where that's effective, but we also have to translate our passion and our causes into laws, institutional practices. That's why John ran for Congress 34 years ago. Like John, we've got to fight even harder for the most powerful tool that we have, which is the right to vote. The Voting Rights Act is one of the crowning achievements of our democracy. That's why John crossed that bridge. That's why he spilled his blood. And by the way, it was the result of Democratic and Republican efforts. President Bush, who spoke here earlier, and his father signed its renewal when they were in office. President Clinton didn't have to because it was the law when he arrived, so instead he made a law to make it easier for people to register to vote. But once the Supreme Court weakened the Voting Rights Act, some state legislators unleashed a flood of laws designed specifically to make voting harder, especially, by the way, state legislators where there's a lot of minority turnout and population growth. That's not necessarily a mystery or an accident. It was an attack on what John fought for. It was an attack on our democratic freedoms. And we should treat it as such. If politicians want to honor John, and I'm so grateful for the legacy and work of all the congressional leaders who are here, but there's a better way than a statement calling him a hero. You want to honor John? Let's honor him by revitalizing the law that he was willing to die for. And by the way, naming it the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, that is a fine tribute. But John wouldn't want us to stop there, just trying to get back to where we already were. Once we pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, we should keep marching to make it even better by making sure every American is automatically registered to vote, including former inmates who've earned their second chance. By adding polling places and expanding early voting and making Election Day a national holiday. So if you are somebody who's working in a factory, or you're a single mom who's got to go to her job and doesn't get time off, you can still cast your ballot by guaranteeing that every American citizen has equal representation in our government, including the American citizens who live in Washington, D.C. and in Puerto Rico. They're Americans. By ending some of the partisan gerrymandering so that all voters have the power to choose their politicians, not the other way around. And if all this takes eliminating the filibuster, another Jim Crow relic, in order to secure the God-given rights of every American, then that's what we should do. Now, even if we do all this, even if every bogus voter suppression law is struck off the books today, we've got to be honest with ourselves that too many of us choose not to exercise the franchise. Too many of our citizens believe their vote won't make a difference, or they buy into the cynicism that, by the way, is the central strategy of voter suppression, to make you discouraged, to stop believing in your own power. So we're also going to have to remember what John said. If you don't do everything you can do to change things, then they will remain the same. You only pass this way once. You have to give it all you have. As long as young people are protesting in the streets, hoping real change takes hold, I'm hopeful, but we can't casually abandon them at the ballot box. Not when few elections have been as urgent on so many levels as this one. We can't treat voting as an errand to run if we have some time. We have to treat it as the most important action we can take on behalf of democracy. And like John, we have to give it all we have. I was proud that John Lewis was a friend of mine. I met him when I was in law school. He came to speak. And I went up and I said, Mr. Lewis, you are one of my heroes. What inspired me more than anything as a young man was to see what you and Reverend Lawson, Bob Moses, and Diane Nash, and others did. And he got that kind of, aw shucks, thank you very much. Next time I saw him, I'd been elected to the United States Senate. And I told him, John, I'm here because of you. And on Inauguration Day in 2009, he was one of the first people I greeted and hugged on that stand. And I told him, this is your day too. He was a good and kind and gentle man. And he believed in us, even when we don't believe in ourselves. And it's fitting that the last time John and I shared a public forum was on Zoom. And I'm pretty sure neither he nor I set up the Zoom call because we didn't know how to work it. There's a virtual town hall with a gathering of young activists who had been helping to lead this summer's demonstrations in the wake of George Floyd's death. And afterwards, I spoke to John privately, and he could not have been prouder to see this new generation of activists standing up for freedom and equality, a new generation that was intent on voting and protecting the right to vote. In some cases, a new generation running for political office. And I told him, all those young people, John, of every race and every religion, from every background and gender and sexual orientation, John, those are your children. They learned from your example, even if they didn't always know it. They had understood through him what American citizenship requires, even if they'd only heard about his courage through the history books. By the thousands, faceless, anonymous, relentless young people, black and white, have taken our whole nation back to those great wells of democracy which were dug deep by the founding fathers in the formulation of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. Dr. King said that in the 1960s, and it came true again this summer. We see it outside our windows in big cities and rural towns, in men and women, young and old, straight Americans and LGBTQ Americans, blacks who long for equal treatment, and whites who can no longer accept freedom for themselves while witnessing the subjugation of their fellow Americans. We see it in everybody doing the hard work of overcoming complacency, of overcoming our own fears and our own prejudices, our own hatreds. You see it in people trying to be better, truer versions of ourselves. And that's what John Lewis teaches us. That's where real courage comes from. Not from turning on each other, but by turning towards one another. Not by sowing hatred and division, but by spreading love and truth. Not by avoiding our responsibilities to create a better America and a better world, but by embracing those responsibilities with joy and perseverance, and discovering that in our beloved community, we do not walk alone. What a gift John Lewis was. We are all so lucky to have had him walk with us for a while and show us the way. God bless you all. God bless America. God bless this gentle soul who pulled it closer to its promise. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.
I am going to pause for a second to take a short break while you listen to information regarding willpower and encouragement. It is all a matter of learning new behaviors, and please remember, it is easier to build strong minds than to repair injured people. What I said is a modification of a quote by Frederick Douglass. He said, "It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." Now
Today, I want to talk about declaration, making the announcement about who you will become. The thing about declaring or making a statement is once you say it, you begin to own it. It becomes yours. Today, I will no longer be a victim. Today, I will begin to make change. Today, I will start to take care of myself. Those are statements that you can own. Do not allow someone else's opinion have the final words on your heart. I want you to declare who you are. Declare who you will become. Today is the day for change. Resilient is defined as someone that can recover from or adjust easily to misfortune. Now I'm telling you, life is gonna throw a lot of things your way. Some will be good and some will be bad. It is easy to be happy and optimistic when life is great. It is easy to be happy when your money's up, when your family's close, when you have a job. But we all know life won't always be like this. So when those dark times start to happen, you need to realize this is just a season to a very long book about your life. You need to realize you are stronger than you think. You can overcome adversity through faith and understanding. You are strong and not alone.
As you listen to Morgan Freeman read John Lewis's last words, think of this. The Republicans have gutted the Voting Rights Act. They engaged in unprecedented gerrymandering. They removed voting machines from the polling places to cause hour-long lines. They passed voter ID laws. They crippled the United States Post Office. Then they have the gall to say that we lie and we cheat when we vote by mail-in ballots.
While my time here has now come to an end, I want you to know that in the last days and hours of my life, you inspired me. You filled me with hope about the next chapter of the great American story when you used your power to make a difference in our society. Millions of people motivated simply by human compassion laid down the burdens of division. Around the country and the world, you set aside race, class, age, language, and nationality to demand respect for human dignity. That is why I had to visit Black Lives Matter Plaza in Washington, though I was admitted to the hospital the following day. I just had to see and feel it for myself, that after many years of silent witness, the truth is still marching on. Emmett Till was my George Floyd. He was my Rayshard Brooks, Sandra Bland, and Breonna Taylor. He was 14 when he was killed, and I was only 15 years old at the time. I will never, ever forget the moment when it became so clear that he could easily have been me. In those days, fear constrained us like an imaginary prison, and troubling thoughts of potential brutality committed for no understandable reason were the bars. Though I was surrounded by 2 loving parents, plenty of brothers, sisters, and cousins, their love could not protect me from the unholy oppression waiting just outside that family circle. Unchecked, unrestrained violence and government-sanctioned terror had the power to turn a simple stroll to the store for some Skittles or an innocent morning jog down a lonesome country road into a nightmare. If we are to survive as one unified nation, we must discover what so readily takes root in our hearts that could rob Mother Emanuel Church in South Carolina of her brightest and best, shoot unwitting concert-goers in Las Vegas, and choke to death the hopes and dreams of a gifted violinist like Elijah McClain. Like so many young people today, I was searching for a way out, or some might say a way in. And then I heard the voice of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on an old radio. He was talking about the philosophy and discipline of nonviolence. He said we are all complicit when we tolerate injustice. He said it is not enough to say it will get better by and by. He said each of us has a moral obligation to stand up, and speak out. When you see something that is not right, you must say something. You must do something. Democracy is not a state. It is an act, and each generation must do its part to help build what we call the beloved community, a nation and world society at peace with itself. Ordinary people with extraordinary vision can redeem the soul of America by getting in what I call good trouble, necessary trouble. Voting and participating in the democratic process are key. The vote is the most powerful nonviolent change agent you have in a democratic society. You must use it because it is not guaranteed. You can lose it. You must also study and learn the lessons of history because humanity has been involved in this soul-wrenching existential struggle for a very long time. People on every continent have stood in your shoes through decades and centuries before you. The truth does not change, and that is why the answers worked out long ago can help you find solutions to the challenges of our time. Continue to build union between movements stretching across the globe, because we must put away our willingness to profit from the exploitation of others. Though I may not be here with you, I urge you to answer the highest calling of your heart and stand up for what you truly believe. In my life, I have done all I can to demonstrate that the way of peace, the way of love and nonviolence, is the more excellent way. Now it is your turn to let freedom ring. When historians pick up their pens to write the story of the 21st century, let them say that it was your generation who laid down the heavy burdens of hate at last, and that peace finally triumphed over violence, aggression, and war. So I say to you, walk with the wind, brothers and sisters, and let the spirit of peace and the power of everlasting love be your guide.
One of the most effective ways of getting ahead in life is by learning from the mistakes and successes of other people. This way, one can avoid the mistakes other people have made and possibly achieve success faster. This is one of the reasons why you cannot afford not to read the series Women of Courage. In this series of books, the lives and times of several women were chronicled who by sheer courage conquered the world around them. These women are examples of the quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson, who said, "When a resolute young fellow steps up to the great bully, which is the world, and takes him boldly by the beard, he is often surprised to find out that the beard comes off in his hand and that it was only tied on to scare away the timid adventurer." Join us at the Women of Courage show every Friday from 3 to 4 p.m. and every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. for information that will change your life. You can also visit us at our website, touchedbythelight.us.